Hi, everyone. Welcome to our monthly product webinar. My name is Megan Azadi, and I'm joined by Jeff Fiore, who's the Director of Product Management for our fleet operations side of the software team. And today we are going to talk about unlocking embedded telematics for OEM. So welcome. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
My pleasure. Good to be here, Megan.
Thanks. So today's topic is OEM, and I'm going to kick it off the way I always do. What does OEM even mean?
Great question. OEM is an acronym for Original Equipment Manufacturer. And that phrase is basically shorthand for the big auto companies that you're all very familiar with. Ford is a great example, Ford, Toyota. Um, Useful to be aware that there are some companies, there are brands. Some companies have multiple brands, so you might not know the name Stellantis. That's not exactly a household name, but Jeep is a very familiar brand to most Americans.
Nice. And what are the cars company actually doing with the telematics data?
Yeah, that's important. Traditionally Azuga has sold an aftermarket GPS device that is installed in the vehicle. It plugs into a diagnostic port, and that has all of the hardware that we use to generate data in it. So a GPS, basically a cell phone, gyroscope, all kinds of things. That same technology is being built into vehicles by the manufacturer. So it goes, it's factory fit hardware, it's covered in warranty, and it's designed specifically, for a given make, model, year. So effectively does the same exact things as our aftermarket hardware, but it does it, as part of the vehicle natively.
Okay. So then where do the telematic providers like Azuga fit into this equation?
Yeah, great question. I have a little document I wanted to share that has a picture, an illustration of how it all fits together. So, Tammy, if you could share, it looks like it's coming up. Great. I will blow that up a little bit. So effectively, this illustrates two different pathways for data. So on the bottom is the traditional Azuga device. You can imagine a similar, again, the same technology, but embedded in the vehicle. That device will send data, whereas the Azuga device sends data directly to Azuga's cloud. The vehicle will send the data to the manufacturer's cloud, where it becomes available to Azuga. So there's kind of an extra hop in there in terms of data. There's some other realities of that architecture that we'll get into, I'm sure, in later questions, but that's effectively how it works. So our goal through building out the support for OEM connected telematics has been to make a uniform user experience. So from an end user's point of view, it shouldn't really matter where the data, what pathway the data gets to the Azuga platform. What you do with that data and the value it provides should be the same regardless of how it's connected.
Awesome. So then this is where I think most people have their questions. How does the OEM solution through the car manufacturers differ from our Azuga traditional hardware-based telematics?
Yeah, great question. And I'm glad you asked it because it lets us really speak to the value of this approach. It's really a matter of preference. There'll be different fleets will have different preferences for this, but the idea with the OEM connected solutions or cloud connected, direct connect, we hear a lot of different terms for it, but we call it generally OEM. First and foremost, it should be simple. Like activating the device, you can do from your keyboard in most cases. So that makes it, one, you're not managing installers or installation processes and, physical troubleshooting, climbing under dashboards, etc. I mentioned earlier that the OEMs have done, their automotive grade engineering to make sure that the hardware is compatible with the vehicle that it's going into. So that makes it very reliable. It also means it's covered under warranty. So if there is an issue, you can take it to the dealer. They can, test it, run diagnostics, replace firmware, things like that. A lot of the OEMs are also doing over-the-air fixes. So that's another major benefit. Because it's, again, embedded in the vehicle from design all the way up, it's very compatible. So we're finding that the data coverage that comes from a given vehicle in terms of some of the more exotic, I'll call them signals, is really like you'll get 100% of the data for things like well, the basics like odometer and seatbelt, but even some much more fine-grained data we haven't surfaced in Azuga yet, but have big plans to, so you can know when the turn signal is on or the windshield wipers, all the vehicle diagnostic data, and more and more some driver behavior data as we see cameras and sensors proliferate in commercial or kind of light duty consumer type vehicles. There'll be more and more driver data. Another one is that it's very secure, right? Something that's plugged into the diagnostic port is kind of obvious visually, and it can be unplugged or otherwise tampered with. When a vehicle goes in for maintenance, the mechanic will have to remove that device to connect his diagnostic equipment, and sometimes people forget to plug it back in. It gets stuck in the cup holder, and it might stay there for a very long time. The other thing is that it's future proof. Like the OEMs are investing a lot in this technology, and so I think we'll see more and more great capabilities unlock over time.
Oh, nice. I want to stop really fast and let everyone know there is a Q&A section. So if you guys have questions as we're going along about the OEM solution that Azuga has or OEM in general, please feel free to throw those in the Q&A. We will spend some time at the end. So just thought I'd insert that there really fast. Okay. So now you've kind of outlined the differences between OEM and hardware solutions. Can you explain to our audience when you should consider one over the other?
Yeah, great question. As I mentioned, it's a little bit of a matter of taste, and I think there's, like with anything, any new technology, a learning curve that has to be managed. So if you're a fleet administrator or you kind of are running a large program for telematics within your organization, you want to make sure you have a firm understanding of what it looks like to embark down this path. We're working very hard at Azuga to make it simple, easy, and very manageable, but it's different than what you're used to. And so, that's a key consideration. Where I think we've seen a lot of traction and where I think there's big appeal is particularly in larger fleets or more geographically diverse fleets, where the operations aspects, can be challenging just because of their scale. OEM is a great solution for that. But I don't want to discount the value for any fleet. If you have a 2 or 3 vehicle fleet, this is still a cool solution to consider because of all those other benefits we talked about earlier.
So if I already have Azuga installed in my car, just leave it, let it be. But what happens when I get a new vehicle?
Sure. So getting a new vehicle is a great opportunity to try OEM. So it's like shipping hardware that you've got to wait for and then install, test, etc. We can enable OEM directly on that new vehicle. We also have the capability to swap. So if you have OBD connected vehicles that you want to move over to OEM, that's a possibility too, and we can support that.
So does OEM does it work with any kind of vehicle, or are there specific vehicles that are compatible with aftermarket?
Yeah,
Can you walk us through that?
Thank you. This is a really important point. And one that can confuse and frustrate. So not all the OEMs have support for, or not all the OEMs ship vehicles with the embedded telematics hardware today. So so far Azuga's been focused on we call the big 4. So that's Toyota, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. Those are the OEMs that, sorry, go ahead.
Can you explain what Stellantis is? Which vehicles are there?
Stellantis is a major automotive manufacturer, and I am just trying to look up the brand so I don't get it wrong. They cover Jeep, Chevrolet, Ram, Dodge. Vehicles are the major brands that, again, Americans will be familiar with. So, Ram trucks, Chryslers, Dodges, we see a lot of those in the Azuga population of customers.
Okay. So you said...
Yeah, go ahead.
So can you repeat back the list again? Because I interrupted you. I just want to make sure we get it in its entirety.
Stellantis we just covered. So Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, Jeep, General Motors, Ford, and Toyota.
Okay.
And we have a roadmap to continue to add more logos. I know we
Mhm.
have some customers that are very excited about Nissan, Kia, Hyundai, some of the EV brands, Tesla, Rivian are all in scope, and we're working to add those as soon as possible.
Okay. That's awesome. So then, do I have to pick one or the other? Do I have to have just OEM or just hardware, or can I have both in my fleet?
Yeah. So when you have some vehicles with aftermarket hardware and some OEM, we call that a mixed fleet. There are
Mhm.
some considerations when that's the case, but it's absolutely a supportable use case, and we have a lot of customers doing that today because
Mhm.
most folks will have in their fleet vehicles that are either older or they're not one of those big
Mhm.
brands, or they just don't have, they don't. It's not a brand that has telematics hardware, and so I think for the next 5 or 10 years, we'll see, um, you know, less than 100% penetration in terms of embedded hardware being available. Um, that number is growing very rapidly. I think the nearly 100% of vehicles that ship, like model year 25 and 26,
Mhm.
almost 100% capabilities. But, I think the average kind of turnover time for a vehicle within a fleet is,
Mhm.
7 years, maybe longer if it's a heavier duty vehicle. So again, it will take some time to work down that long tail until there's 100% OEM compatibility.
Okay. I'm gonna pivot really fast because there was a question in the chat and also a Q&A that are relevant to this particular conversation. So, what year are supported? You mentioned 2025 and 2026. What determine what year vehicles get switched? Is there kind of like a framework we can use, or is there a chart or something we can look at?
Yeah, very good question. It's not uniform. So certain
Okay.
OEMs, particularly Ford and GM, started earlier.
Mhm.
GM through their OnStar platform and Ford with
Okay.
native hardware. So they started
Mhm.
in the mid 20 teens, and I'd say they have been at it the longest, and so have the best
Mhm.
coverage penetration in terms of vehicle, make, model, and trims that ship with the required hardware. Stellantis
Mhm.
is more recent. I think they began in model year 23, with near 100% coverage, and Toyota was about 2021. Now,
Okay.
I want to make an important point here because just basing it on model year isn't a reliable metric or isn't a
Okay.
reliable test per se, because they didn't start with 100% of the vehicles they shipped in that year. They
Okay.
started more the high end trim models or maybe higher end
Mhm.
vehicles, or it was an optional add-on that you had to, check
Mhm.
the requests explicitly. So
Okay.
even though you may have a vehicle in one of those makes and model years, it may not have the required hardware for this type of connectivity.
Okay.
So the best way to be certain is to share the VIN with Azuga,
Okay.
and we have some tools that enable us to look it up VIN by VIN. So for each individual vehicle in the world, we
Mhm.
can tell whether it has the required hardware to connect to Azuga.
Okay. So I think what would also be interesting to know is, so let's say I want to have a dash cam and I want to install a dash cam into my car. Can I do it with OEM and the dash cam at the same time?
Yeah,
Or
really.
does I have to use the hardware?
No, the Azuga has a few different models of dash camera, and the
Mhm.
AI, all three of the AI dash cameras that we support
Mhm.
are, interoperable with OEM connected
Mhm.
vehicles. Don't necessarily require a data logger for those solutions to work. So if you are
So,
considering cameras or already have them installed, this is not a blocker.
okay, awesome. Okay, so then what if I just want to check to see if my car is compatible myself? How could I do that? Can I do that?
Azuka is going to have a public-facing VIN checker on our website very soon. I'm working with the marketing team to get that live in Q3.
Mhm.
So that right now, the best solution is to just reach out to an Azuga representative. If you have a dedicated rep you have a relationship with, they can help you very quickly. Or if you don't, our support team is more than able
Mhm.
to answer that question. And so if it's a long list, we just need one column of VINs. If it's a small number that you're just curious about, we can paste that right in an email, and Azuga will send a report that says, by VIN,
Mhm.
make, model year, all the vehicle details, whether or not it's compatible.
Is there a way, like if I'm in Azuga myself, is there a way for me to do it as a customer? not public
Yeah, great
facing?
question. That's a good opportunity to show you a cool new feature that we're planning for Azuka Fleet. So if you would share the screen again, I will do a little demonstration. Um, how does that look for the audience? Is that large enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger. So what I'm showing you right now is a screen that we're going to release in Q3. Our target is September 1st. And this is a new screen in the admin section. So in the admin section of Azuga Fleet, if you click up here, I have a few extra menu items in my board as part of the product team. But you're seeing a screen that enables you to manage the OEM subscription. So that's a sort of a
Hmm.
new concept. You could think of it like a device subscription today. So when Azuga mails a data logger to somebody, that's a billable subscription, similar
Hmm.
concept for OEM. And so there's a new screen that dedicated to managing those subscriptions within our
Hmm.
platform. And you'll see there's this concept of a candidate. That is a vehicle that is compatible. So we've crawled over our whole database of VINs that are known to Azuga. So if you have
Hmm.
your fleet vehicles on our platform, we'll know the VIN. We've already checked every one of those to say whether it's compatible. So anything that's a candidate that's either subscribed in process or a candidate will show up here, and you can scroll through this list to see the status of everything in your fleet.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at a few other cool features of the screen, this is meant to make it very simple. In some of
Hmm.
our pilots, there was a lot of legwork involved in compiling the data to kind of describe the various states of subscribed. Um,
Hmm.
I could talk all afternoon about the onboarding process, but there's really three critical steps. The first is past identifying compatibility, which we've done here automatically. The first critical step is consenting to share data. So because of the architecture I showed earlier, let me just figure out how to get out of the screen and go back. Because of the I'll call it provenance of the data flow, is the data that is emitted by a vehicle is the property of that vehicle's owner, or
Okay.
if you are the party that leases it, same thing. So that data belongs to you as the vehicle's
Hmm.
owner, and it goes to the OEM. The OEM needs permission to share that with Azuga, and there's a
Hmm.
couple of ways we can do that to make it easy. A lot of OEMs have a commercial fleet like program. So Ford and GM are the primary examples. They have something called they both have commercial fleet programs. They're identified by unique IDs. So a FIN fleet ID number or a FAN fleet account number for GM. So if you have one of those accounts, you may use it today to order vehicles or services directly from your dealer or from the OEM, and you should have an ID number that identifies you as an organization, and all the vehicles that you've bought on that account will be already the OEM will be aware of it, and it'll be really easy to say share my data. If you have vehicles that you've gotten maybe on the secondary market or through acquisition or other, I don't know what to call them, non-traditional, but other means, then you may need to work with the OEM to get that vehicle added to your account. If you don't have an account, it's really simple to sign up. And so I'd
Hmm.
encourage you to do that. So that's sharing the data with Azuga, making the data available. Then you just have to request turning it on. So that's what we
Hmm.
call subscription here. So you'll see a clear kind of indicator of whether the consent is complete and whether subscription is active. And we've got a couple different states here. So candidate means we haven't even tried yet. Subscribe means it's working, and pending means it's in process. So sometimes when you say, please turn this vehicle on, we need to, the OEM needs to connect to that vehicle to send it the right commands to say, start sending me data. And,
Hmm.
I want to get this data in this format. Like there's some details there that the OEM manages on our behalf. And so that can take a minute, especially if the vehicle's not being driven or if there's something, if it's offline, has a dead battery, etc. And then finally, we validate that the vehicle is tracking. So even
Hmm.
though subscription succeeded, it may not have sent data yet simply because it's idle.
Hmm.
Or that you could point to something else being wrong. In the cases where something isn't complete, we've gone to great lengths to make it really clear what to do. And so there's a kind of there's a screen here if you drill down on one of these rows in the new admin screen, where you can get all the details kind of that are in the OEM context. And so is the consent complete? Yes. When? And this is subscription is pending. It says right here, this one has some kind of internal error. And so have created this troubleshooting document or this troubleshooting section that links to our document, some of that documentation I was showing a moment ago, that makes it really easy to diagnose those problems and understand what you need to do to resolve them. So when folks sign up, in an ideal scenario, 100% of them just work first try. In reality, we see a little bit less than 100%, and so there is some back and forth that can be required to get all of them online.
That's awesome. When will this screen be available? You said September, early September?
Yes, we're targeting September 1st.
Okay, awesome. Great. I do have a question for you. It's kind of out there. So currently we track driver scores with our OBD devices. How would OEM, like, what's the difference in the driver scoring and how does that impact someone's driver score? Is there a difference? Is there not a difference? Can you lead into that?
Yeah, that's another good question, and one we get a lot. There can be differences. So I mentioned that the different OEMs began their journey of embedding this telematics hardware in the vehicles at different times. Kind of in the same fashion, they've made different design decisions in terms of the way,
Right.
the type and the way they convey different types of events, specific driver behavior in this case. So what Ford considers hard braking may differ slightly from what GM considers hard braking, idling, pick your metric. And so there can be some differences. They're just different. They're not really, no one's more or less correct, but we do have to account for those. And so Azuga has gone to great lengths to again offer a uniform experience where those differences should be more or less invisible, but they are helpful to be aware of, especially if you rewards deeply in your organization.
Are we going to, is that work done or is there continue to improvement, et cetera?
Yeah, it's sort of, in a lot of ways, it's a personal matter, so it may differ fleet to fleet depending on their use of driver scores and what KPI within that or key metrics within that you use to drive improvements in your program to improve driver behavior. Typically, just to characterize it broadly, what we see are differences in rates. So, for instance, the Azuga hardware is monitoring speeding like in near real time. The OEMs are just sending more point events to say, hey, we noticed speeding, and they may be less frequent, but they're no less valid, and so that can have an impact on driver score. But we have some ways to normalize those data feeds before the score is computed.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to ask you a really hard one now, Jeff. This one came from the chat. What about big trucks like Peterbilt and Kenworth? Are we going to be connecting them to OEM as well, or are we connecting to them already? How are we approaching them?
Yeah, great question. We are not connecting to them yet. That is absolutely on a roadmap. So the 4 or 5 major brands in North America all have, again, varying degrees of support for OEM. A lot of those heavy duty manufacturers have kind of their own, and this is true of the lighter duty vehicles as well, like on the Ford and GM. They'll have their own OEM telematics solution. I don't want to advertise any of them, but if you do some searching on the web, you'll find telematics programs with pretty much all those major OEMs, and they are less specialized. They're more focused on kind of vehicle management and finding ways for the OEM to sell you more vehicles. But to get back to the question directly, we don't have support for heavy duty vehicles. We're working very closely with our partners to offer that. I don't have committed timelines yet, but it's absolutely in the vision.
Yeah, we do. From my experience, I think we've had a lot of requests for that. Trying to think if there's any more questions. So this isn't going to be available till September. Let's wrap it up. If I want to add OEM to my fleet or if I have a new vehicle coming in, what should I do?
You should contact your Azuga rep. We can absolutely support this today.
Mm-hmm.
We've got thousands of vehicles that are connected via OEM right now. And
Mm-hmm.
happy customers. And so this screen is really just makes the administration of the OEM subscriptions a lot easier and more transparent for the end user.
Mm-hmm.
But Azuga has folks standing by that can connect your vehicle right now.
One more question. What about ELD? Does OEM work with our electronic logging devices?
It does not today. So those in Canada, at least, and to some degree in the States, there's some regulations around what's considered ELD compatible, and there's specs around the way that it has to work. So today, the Azuga recommendation, if you need ELD, is to install a data logger device that's been certified and is integrated with our ELD applications.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay. I've seen a lot of questions in the chat about cost. I would recommend that you talk to your rep because I think I think it's important to outline how it differs between between your solution and what you have in your settings. So definitely reach out to Azuga, and we actually have some of your emails, so we will also kind of link you up with your customer success rep as well after this. And I have another question. How does a refresh work with OEM?
How does a refresh? I think maybe they're referring to a firmware refresh. In that case, there's really two pathways. Azuga does not control that directly, so if there's something wrong with the embedded hardware or the firmware on that hardware more specifically, we have our data partners, the OEMs, can sometimes push an over-the-air command to just reset. It's pretty rare. It's not necessary very often. They also do, periodic updates when they make their own improvements, similar to the way Azuga does. All these companies are continually enhancing the firmware on those devices. If you're really stuck, you can take it to a certified dealer. Like if it's a Ford, you go to the Ford dealership and they have the diagnostic equipment and the know-how to do like a harder reset.
Awesome. All right. Do we have any more questions? We have a little bit more time, but if we don't have any more questions, I will let you guys have your time back. But I would love to answer more questions if you have them. I'll give you guys a minute. I think, Jeff, when they send out the email, we should send out the compatibility chart so that everyone just has that when we send out the video later. So I will make sure that happens.
Cool. Yeah, and one of the things I'm really excited about is really improved product documentation. So when this release goes out, there'll be a whole new section in the Azuga Help Docs that make all this very clear, and there's a table in there that's easy to reference, but we can distribute it ahead of that.
Okay. I did get this question again. Is there a cost difference between OEM and OBD? I think we are the team that builds the product. So we're talking about the technical aspects. So I recommend talking to your CS and sales reps to get the cost information. And it doesn't look like there's any more questions. So thank you guys so much for showing up. I hope everyone, let me see, is that another question? Oh, yes. Can this be done completely remotely, or is there something that will have to be done in person with the vehicle? We have trucks that are out of state.
Great question. And very unsatisfying answer. It depends. So certain makes of vehicle do require I call it the in-cab step. They're typically very, very simple. So for example, for Ford, there's a switch in the head unit, the menu and basically the radio, where you have to enable that vehicle to send its data over the air. There's a similar process with OnStar. So you'd have to sit in the vehicle and press the button in some cases. In most cases, those things are enabled by default when the vehicle ships. But there are, sometimes the supply chain can be a bit of a long and winding road. There's a chance that somewhere along the way it got disabled.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, let me thank you guys so much for joining. I hope this was informational. We will send a copy of this recording out to everyone as well, and maybe some additional follow-up information. But if you do have any questions, please reach out to your CS or sales reps, and they will help you get started with OEM. And we really appreciate having everyone here. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.